Segment now in an interesting twist of fate. There was a breather for the fallen foreign exchange reserves as the reserves returned to a growth trajectory with a gain of $280 million in just 2 weeks. According to Central Bank of Nigeria data, the reserves rose to $33.38 billion as of the 29th of last month from $33.1 billion on the 14th of July after suffering some declines in recent months. Dropped to $33.09 billion as of July the 12th from $33.28 billion on the 1st of last month. The reserves recorded its sharpest rise in January, receiving a huge inflow of $929 million, recording a 2.6% increase on a month-on-month basis to $36.3 billion from $35.37 billion in December, courtesy of rising crude oil prices. Now, to discuss this in depth, I have joining me via Skype partner Deloitte Nigeria, Taiwo Okwande. Good to have you on the show this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's quite an interesting twist we've had with the pendulum swing for the external reserves. It has been an upward, downward trajectory. What's the ruling sentiment you make out of all of this movement we've had so far, beyond crude oil prices, the COVID-19 shocks, and other elements that seem to tilt the pendulum here and there?
Okay. Thank you. That's a very good question. One thing everyone has to realize is that the movement in our foreign exchange reserves is dependent on three major factors. The first one is the change or the direction of international trade, which is basically, either within or outside our control. It depends on how you are looking at it. The second one is the policy of government. I'm talking about the policy of the Nigerian government with respect to productive activities within the country. And the third one is the structural shift in production. So when I say structural shift in production, I'm talking about the productive activities within the country. What kind of products are being produced within the country? What are we exporting? Are we exporting or are we producing items that will be able to earn foreign exchange reserve for us or something else? So from the way I've been looking at it, there have been a lot of policy shifts in the last few months. That's why you see the movement, upward and downward movement in the foreign exchange reserves. As at 2 days ago, the foreign exchange reserve stood at about $33 billion, which is about 0.6% reduction from where it was about 2 months ago. Though there has been indications, different kind of indications to show that this will go up within the next few months if government is able to stick to certain policies that are already working. One of the policies that I can think of at the moment is the maybe the stoppage of the sale of Forex to BDC, and I'll tell you why I think this has a very good impact on our Forex reserves. If you notice, when the government announced the stoppage of the sale of Forex to BDC, the exchange rate rose to about 525 naira to a dollar. And a lot of people came out and said that, wow, government actually made a mistake in introducing that kind of policy, that if you want to defend the exchange rate, stopping the BDCs from selling is not the right way to go. About a week after the introduction of that policy, the exchange rate started coming down again. As at yesterday, the exchange rate is about 506 naira to a dollar. And from what I've seen already today, I've seen signs that it's going to reduce further. So, like I said, if government is able to at least do its own part of by introducing policies that will encourage investment into the country, and policies that will be able to encourage the production of items that will be very good forex earner, then there will be, very good chance that the economy is going to increase or improve significantly, and we're going to generate additional forex which is going to help in improving our reserves.
I was also going to ask you now, looking at policy, government, and the direction of the government at this point in time, we've had initiatives like Naira for dollar, looking at improved diaspora remittances, also ensuring that we have a list of access to Forex for the importation of certain goods. But at the end of the day, how then do we take seriously the conversation around product and value addition, which you made mention of? Because it sounds cliche to repeat this over and over again. The country is way too blessed to have difficulty in having products to serve the international community in exchange for Forex. Do you share the same sentiment?
Yeah, I share. Yeah, you are right, and I've said this so many times that we have a lot of resources that should be able to that we should be able to use in any Forex. But there are so many challenges that we need to overcome before we can turn around this trend, this negative trend. And I will tell you one of the reasons why I said that we need to do a lot of things in turning the economy around. The first issue that we need to solve is the issue of infrastructure. Even though you have the natural resources that can be converted for the purpose of any Forex, you need to be able to sort out the infrastructure issue. We have gap in our infrastructure within the country, and without the infrastructure being worked on or government improving this infrastructure, such as power, such as electricity, such as road transportation, there is going to be those things will continue to create a barrier in our ability to turn our existing trade deficit into a surplus. I'm sure you are aware that a lot of the products that are used for the purpose of manufacturing activities within the country, raw materials are being imported from outside the country. And as you can see, some of these raw materials are beginning to become more expensive for local manufacturers to bring in. So manufacturers have decided to, instead of producing, it is better to buy these raw materials from countries that are producing them cheaper, so that products can be sold in their finished form to consumers within the country. So you are seeing a situation whereby manufacturers are beginning to stop productive activities, and they are now buying finished products from sellers outside the country, from countries like China, from Singapore, that are able to produce this item at cheaper rates. We are buying from them and we are selling within the country. So this is not good. This is not going to help well for the country, because what we are doing now is to continue to destroy our ability to export and continue to improve the propensity to import, which is not necessarily good for the economy. And from what you said about the diaspora remittance, I agree with you. The policy played its part, but on its own, it will never encourage the kind of remittances that the government is expecting from the diaspora. And I will tell you the reason. If, as of today, if you are able to buy dollar at 506 naira from the parallel market, will you, as a reasonable person, bring in that dollar into the country through the official rate and at the rate of 411 naira and get additional 5 naira from government, which will give you roughly about 416 naira, when you can go to the parallel market and exchange that dollar for about 506 naira? Look at the margin between how much you are able to obtain if you go through the government channel or you go through the parallel market. So it is not necessarily going to work on its own unless government is able to introduce additional policies that will be able to encourage people from bringing their money into the country. Whichever way you look at it, people will always bring their money into the country. But how do you expect them to bring it in? Do they bring it in through the official channel, or they bring it in and go and exchange in the parallel market?
And to what extent do you think these also contribute to the noise of forex scarcity and also the pressure we've had in the FX market as well? This was one of the biggest conversations we had with the last monetary policy meeting. At the end of the day, we have to ensure that there's some level of ease, some level of sanity in our FX market, and the policy within this regime has to be much more productive, because at the end of the day, the Naira is really struggling to stay afloat, and if we need to fund the manufacturing sector or the services sector to ensure that we have much more exchanges coming to bear, then prices just have to come down before we can even have the overall cost of production also slashed to a very large amount. Then we can have competitive edge.
I agree. The issue that we have around the forex scarcity is about the policy and the intervention policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria. As you are aware, the Central Bank believes that it is adopting or it is operating what is called a floating exchange system. But we are still having difficulty around how this floating exchange system is able to galvanize or is able to encourage people from either exchanging forex through the official market. Now, the CBN, I'm sure, like I mentioned before, has stopped selling forex to the BDC. Now, if you want to get forex, you have to go to the bank. And the amount of forex that you're accessible to as an individual, as a person that wants to be involved in permissible activity has increased significantly. But the problem doesn't stop at that. The problem is that even though government is trying as much as possible to see how it can enough dollars can be available within the economy so that people will be able to use the dollars to do their business, there's still a problem of unification of our exchange, foreign exchange rates. At the moment, the government has not been able to achieve a proper unification of the foreign exchange rate. What we now have at the moment is what is called the multiple exchange rate, because you have until about 2 months ago, we had about 3 different exchange rates. We have the official exchange rate of the CBN, we have the NAFEX rate, we have the parallel market rate. Government has been able to unify the NAFEX rate and the official rate. But the problem is that the parallel market rate is significantly higher than this. So what this encourages is that people will now have to hold dollars even when they are able to buy it from the official market. When you buy from the official market, you know that there is a benefit in holding the dollars and engaging yourself in what is called round tripping. So if you do that, you'll be able to make more money from holding your dollars and selling it in the parallel market. So this will definitely create what is called scarcity, and people will not be able to buy dollars for permissible activities. So we need dollars for the purpose of productive activities within the country. If they are not available, if dollar is not available, if forex is not available in abundance, so that people will be able to use it in a normal legal way, then we'll continue to have this scarcity, and the productive activity within the country will continue to go down.
And then, so talking about the Forex policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria to ensure that we also checkmate the activities of broader exchange operators now, the CBN governor insists that banks would have teller units which are designated for customers who are looking to have Forex. Upon the presentation of the right documents, then you'll be able to access Forex. But is this really enough? What other incentives or initiatives do you think we can explore to ensure that even within the commercial bank space or within financial institutions, we can have easier access to Forex, because there are still bottlenecks, limits? We did a little bit of field research yesterday, and a bank still said, well, the policy is fresh and they've not necessarily had they can't allocate as much as a customer was looking out for.
Yeah, you are correct. And I think one thing people need to realize is that this is a new policy. It will take time for everybody to buy into it. CBN is a very strong agency of government, and it has a very strong influence over banks. So for everybody to buy into this new policy of having to sell to final consumer or final users of Forex, it will take a bit of a time, but we'll get there. So as long as people are patient, and as long as the financial institutions, the banks that are tasked with the responsibility of selling these dollars are not holding the same way BDCs were doing, then we are going to be fine. So I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think possibly maybe in the short term, we are likely going to see the status will continue to exist. But I think in the medium to long term, people will have access to dollars.
And talking about the monitoring mechanisms that the CBN expects to explore to ensure that we have we don't have high-handedness on the part of commercial banks or financial institutions as well. This is critical to ensuring that the nation still has its cushion intact. How do you think we're going to also have better monitoring systems or initiatives put in place to just checkmate as much as possible any sharp practice?
Okay, I think that would be one aspect that I think would be easier to monitor now. When government CBN was selling to the BDC, you had so many BDC that I thought were too many for government to monitor. When you have so many organizations that you want to monitor their activities, there will be sharp practices, there will be certain activities that you will not be able to see, even though you believe you are the monetary agency. But banks are not many. We only have few banks in the country that the government, CBN specifically, has very strong oversight on. So CBN has strong influence and is able to monitor the activities of banks. And as you are aware, when banks sell Forex, they are supposed to make returns to the CBN stating the amount of Forex that have been sold and what activities those Forex that have been sold are meant for. So I think the monitoring system is going to be a lot stronger now because the CBN has only few organizations to monitor compared to what we used to have when government was selling to the BDCs.
And now, Mr. Okwade, do you see your forecast for the remaining half of this year? Do you see our external reserves continue to move on the upward trajectory, or you think it's going to plateau at some point in time, or we'll still have this inflection of up and down movements?
I think it's still going to be up and down movement. The problem is we still have a bit of a situation around our oil and how we are able to sell our oil and the influence OPEC has on the production quota. At the moment, Nigeria continues to produce about 1.4 million barrels of oil per day, even though we have the capacity to produce about 2.5 million. The reason why we are doing that is because of the production quota imposed by OPEC. So what will now have to happen is that if OPEC is able to achieve what we want to do in terms of stabilization of the oil market within the next few months, then there is a tendency that the production quota for some countries will have to increase. And I believe Nigeria is one of those countries, whose quota we have to increase eventually. So if you are able to increase the quota, and because of the projection that the price of oil, crude oil, is going to increase to about $100 before the end of 2021. If you are able to increase the quota and we are able to produce maybe about 2 million barrels per day, and we have the price increasing to about $100, that alone we have to increase the amount of reserves, forest reserves that we're going to have. The other issue is around security. The security situation in the country is not something that that augurs well for investors, because when investors believe that their money is not safe, they will keep their money instead of bringing the money into the country. We need to improve the security situation. If the security situation in the country improves in the next few months, with the expected increase in the price of crude oil and the expected increase in the production quota imposed by OPEC, then we are likely going to see increase in forest reserve. But if not, then I believe we are still going to see all these back and forth, upward movements and backward movements in the next half of the year.
And like you've also rightly mentioned, cautious optimism is the ruling sentiment. Thank you very much for your time on the show today, Taiwo Okwade. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks for having me.